Hey y'all, it's Adrielle. I'm here again with Caren. We are here to do our little weekly DEI chat. I can't remember if we came up with a name for this, but
I don't think we have a name
I
for
think I labeled the playlist like DEI off the cuff or something like that. I don't know, but we're here to talk about all the things relevant to DEI. We already, if you're not familiar, have these conversations offline when we don't record them, and we decided recently that we should start recording them and sharing them because we always have these very candid conversations about the work that we do, about different topics that come across our desks. Do people still say that? I don't know. And so today we are going to be kind of digging into what it's like to navigate the world of DEI as a Black person, because I don't think we've really explored that too much. And you and I, Caren, we talk about different things that we've run into. But I had pinged Caren yesterday because I was sitting in on a webinar, and there was this DEI practitioner who was talking about a book that they wrote, and they were pretty much giving it was like a 20 to 30 minute talk about allyship. And I noticed two things as I was listening to their talk. One is that a lot of the work around allyship is obviously, as well, I shouldn't say obviously, typically the work for allyship is targeted towards white individuals and generally cisgendered white individuals to be allies to historically minoritized, historically underrepresented groups. And historically marginalized, however you want to label us, I guess. But the focus is pretty much always on white individuals to be allies, although one would argue, and I agree, we all have an opportunity to be an ally. We all have an opportunity to assess our power and privilege as it relates to other people. Allyship is situational, right? If Caren and I are in a room of Black women and we notice there's, a more introverted Black woman, not to say that we're not already borderline introverted. Caren, I know you are. I'm like ambivert. I'm in between. But there's opportunity in a situation like that where we could still help amplify someone else's voice, right? Despite us having shared identity. So allyship is situational. Everyone has the opportunity. But going back to what I was saying, generally when DEI practitioners are talking about allyship, it's very much geared towards white individuals. And I couldn't help but notice during this chat yesterday how the work itself and the approach is very much rooted in comforting those individuals. And, I hate to say coddling, but that's the best word I can think of, right? Sort of adding some fluff. A good example that was discussed was like, hey, someone that a leader is misgendering someone and keeps doing it repeatedly. And, it can cause someone to shut down if you call them out in that moment versus, taking a much kinder approach to them to say, hey, I typically see you as a really inclusive leader. I was really surprised that you kept misgendering this person. And then even empathizing with them to be like, hey, that I did the same thing a few months ago. Here's how I navigated it. And it's like, again, it just felt very much rooted in trying to comfort that person versus just being like, you were misgendering this person and that's disrespectful. So that was one thing I noticed. And then the second thing that I noticed is that there is just, when it comes to non-Black DEI practitioners, I find that there is just a significant likability that is at play. And there's actually, aside from this role as a DEI practitioner, there's a lot of research around what's called the likability penalty, where, some people are seen as more likable or less likable than others, depending on their identities, or they can be seen as more or less competent than other people. And it's just like this natural bias that we as humans have picked up on based on stereotypes that we've generated. So Black people, going back to our topic today, Black people are often seen as being not likable and less competent. And so as a DEI practitioner, there's this added barrier when you are Black to get people to even like you. And I've just noticed, just from watching, webinars and participating in a lot of events and things like that, that Black DEI practitioners like us often struggle to get past that likability piece. Whereas non-Black DEI practitioners, I find people are like more engaged with them. There's like this more laid back cheerfulness. And I know I'm kind of ranting, so I'm going to stop and let you chime in, Caren.
No,
but
you're good.
I just wanted to kind of set up the conversation and just like call out those two observances, like the fact that a lot of not just allyship, but just taking even a bigger step back, a lot of our work is centered around designing and accommodating white individuals in order for them to start to want to make change. And it's really frustrating. And then on top of that, the second piece is being a Black DEI practitioner and trying to break past that barrier of likability, pushing past stereotypes, the belief that you might be less competent. I can't tell you how many times I've had people say to me like, oh, I didn't expect you to like speak like that, or I didn't expect you to know this, or, you know, deliver that content in that way. And you can just tell like, I didn't just get here, right? So I've had this experience throughout my entire life, and I just know it's based on my identity. You didn't expect that to come from me. I've even had people be like, oh, I didn't, like, you're so young. I can't believe how articulate you are. And I'm like, number one, I'm not that young. I just black don't crack. We got the good genes. However, like, it's just so unfortunate that there's this expectation and that we have these biases, which is a natural human tendency, psychology 101. But it's just so frustrating and have to constantly navigate past that.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And I think for me, like where I struggle is like on one hand, you know, white folks make up a large percentage of the American population. I'm being very clear about talking about the United States American population.
Yes.
So I understand a lot of the focus being on it just for like sheer percentage of population. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I also understand that, you know, like toddlers, you have to kind of spoon feed folks information, especially when it is deeply uncomfortable. However, it does become incredibly frustrating because there seems almost a willful, I won't say willful incompetence, but willful stuckness. And a willful, oh my gosh, teach me. Oh my gosh, I want to learn. I want to do these things. And it's like, but you're willing to spend time and effort doing a deep dive and learning about all sorts of things. Like I can't tell you how many threads I see about optimization and modernization. Threads upon threads upon books upon threads upon like really small nuanced things.
Right.
But when it really comes down to the work of seeing, hearing, and caring for those around you, because that's really what all DEI work is seeing, hearing, and caring for those around you.
Right.
That all of a sudden it's so abstract and it's so difficult that you can't conceptualize it all. It is incredibly frustrating. And so I understand soft selling it because you kind of have to kind of work people into this concept, but holy cow, it is absolutely frustrating to be able to do it. And so I fully understand why folks from historically marginalized groups after a while just kind of go, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely. And it's frustrating. And to your point, you know, it just feels, it would be helpful in the context, kind of speaking about allyship here, but it would be helpful if those who, you know, claimed and said they want to be allies, if they were to accept that there's this discomfort that comes along with this journey, right? And to accept that if someone calls you out, it's not an opportunity for you to shut down or, you know, to feel like, oh, I should stop doing the work or I shouldn't try, because it's like you gotta meet folks halfway, right?
Exactly.
And allyship shouldn't be something you're seeking a reward for, seeking a gold star for, pat on the back. You shouldn't even be walking around calling yourself an ally to start. But there is a lot of work that I just wish allies would do. And I, as a DEI practitioner, you know me, I barely do. People come to me, they're like, oh, do you do allyship or anti-racism training? No, I don't. That's not what I specialize in. I'm very much a strategic DEI thought partner. That is my bag. That is what I enjoy. That's what I'm good at. I'm good at bringing people of different backgrounds together to have productive conversations. That is what I specialize in. I do not have the patience. I've done, one like really basic introductory allyship and anti-racism trainings, but I don't have any desire to dig deeper because I just feel like you could do the work on your own, to your point. And I don't have it in me to tiptoe around people. Like, I'm very much, even in my regular life, someone who's going to call something out. I was talking to my mom and she said something. I was like, no, you mean XYZ. And she was like, oh, and yes, I corrected you because that's where we are. Moving on, just take note, let's go. Right. And that's the same approach I take for other people. I know not everyone's that comfortable, but a lot of people aren't that comfortable because they're fearful of the reaction that the other person will have. So it's like, why can't people just check their reactions ahead of time and keep it pushing? That's my mini rant.
Oh, no, and absolutely. And I think that, ironically, I think just kind of like from a business perspective, like that is where the marketplace is. Because folks like you and I don't do that kind of work because it is very soul crushing and it is very, it feels like being Sisyphus again. But there's absolutely a marketplace for it. And like, that's why, you have entire organizations who just do things like unconscious bias training. And you do just like the very basic things you can pick up in like reading 3 blog posts.
Right.
But there's a marketplace for it. And there's a marketplace for folks who are like, well, I've done what I needed to do and I really don't want to dig further into it. And so, it almost becomes self-selecting at that point where you would want organizations to partner with folks like us who are willing to do deeper dives and willing to make connections and adjustments in places where you don't normally see it. And to think of us the same way you would think of other management and other business type consultants. Like, you would never talk with a transformation or modernization consultant and only go through what you've seen on Harvard Business Review, like the first page. Like, you'd never do that because it would be absurd for you to pay that kind of money for that kind of work.
Right.
But yet it happens all the time in the DEI space. And so I think that because there is a gap in the market and because more historically marginalized people are so burnt out to do the work, that opens up the space for folks who are there for vibes or who are there for perhaps not the most corrective reasons to step into that gap, which becomes doubly frustrating because then at that point you're like, okay, it becomes, again, self-selecting, that you see these spaces that look closer to the people who are getting the information. So it becomes more palatable. And then folks like us who don't want to do that kind of work, we become uppity or, we don't want to help out. And so, it becomes self-selecting. And I feel like I just went on a little bit of a rant there, but that is
you're good.
A frustration that I've had. Like, again, I absolutely understand. Like, and if I wanted to transform TPA now and just focus on unconscious bias training and DEI 101, I would be booked and busy from now until forever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But absolutely. I know I would hate the work. I know that it doesn't do anything. And I know that it isn't transformational. So, I'm going to have a lot fewer clients, but the clients that I am going to work with are actually committed to doing work.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the work that you would do in that space would be transformational. I mean, I'm a firm believer that if somebody walks away from a workshop with just one new piece of information, that you've successfully done your job. But in terms of it really transforming a workplace, I agree. It's so unfortunate that people want to still do these little low-hanging fruit quick hits, but don't want to supplement it with something else, right? Which is the longer term strategy goals, which is thinking about how do I actually integrate this work into, across all domains of our organization. What you were saying made me think about the fact that I have missed out on a couple of facilitation opportunities because the client wanted someone who looked like the participants, or they wanted someone who was older because these are senior executives and we don't think they're going to listen to you, someone younger. And I think that also like is one of the driving forces behind why I wanted to talk about this today, because it's like, again, instead of pushing back and challenging what these folks believe, we're just going to be like, all right, let me give you someone more palatable to you. Who, quite frankly, probably isn't going to deliver, not to toot my own horn, but probably isn't going to deliver the content in the way that I am and help you connect the dots. And at the end of the day, is not going to be able to present and share a perspective with you of from a marginalized viewpoint. Although it's still possible, right? Like I know someone who is a white DEI practitioner, facilitator, and identifies as lesbian. And so marginalized group, white woman, checks the box, still relatable, and I get that. But it's just unfortunate that, people are weeding folks like us out because they're like, well, I don't think they're going to actually listen to you. And so how do you deal with that? Right. Now we're at this point where there are all these layoffs happening, particularly in the tech space. Black folks, there's an article that just came out recently. Black people are being impacted the most. In addition, those in DEI roles are being impacted. Roles are, entire teams are being laid off. Not that there were significant teams to start. Most DEI teams are very small, 2-3 people, if that, if they're lucky to have a team. Yeah,
there's a lot of team of ones out there.
A lot of team of ones, chief diversity officers, which, we saw this influx of people making these commitments. Oh, we're going to hire CDOs. We're going to hire CDOs right after the heinous murder of George Floyd. And yet now, that's slowly trickled off since then for a number of reasons. And over the past 6 months with these layoffs, we've really seen a decline. And that's not even scratching the surface of the fact that prior to this, the chief diversity officer role was already a struggle. Like, most of those folks were not sitting with the rest of the execs in the org. They were considered VPs. A lot of them did not have the resources or bandwidth that they needed. A lot of them were getting pushback. Exactly. And also very few are Black, which again ties back to what you were saying. You have to base it off of our overall demographic population, at least in the States, because that's the data that we have right now. But it's just very unfortunate. And then, you also have to think about turnover. A lot of folks get burnt out in these roles very quickly. I think on average, folks stay in CDO roles for like a year and a half-ish, if that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Somewhere like 2 years.
We'll link the article. But yeah, it's not very long. So yeah, I don't know what this is going to mean for the state of DEI moving forward. But I do think a lot of these organizations are going to regret cutting away and doing away with their DEI professionals and experts, because with all the changes that are happening, you need strong, inclusive leadership and inclusive management. And if you're not skilled at that, you're going to have a hard time retaining folks.
Oh,
and getting folks to work together.
And I also think that we're at a point where we are at a generational change, and I think that is wonderful. Like, I think that's wonderful. We're at that point where folks who are our age are now starting to move into upper and senior level management.
Right.
Folks who are younger than us are now starting to move into, middle level management. We're also now starting to get folks coming in, entry level. There's a couple of generations underneath. That's very weird to say.
Right.
Very weird to say. But because of that also just kind of changes what the workforce is going to look like.
Right. Right.
And so because that's going to change what the workforce looks like, you've got to have people who can help you with that. And my concern is that that's where DEI work comes in, and we're just not going to be prepared. We're just not, and then we're going to end up scrambling like we did in 2020. And it's going to be that ebb and flow as opposed to just continuing with what it is.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, again, so many people have been conditioned to think of DEI as this add-on of, again, we're doing these informational talks and these Heritage Month celebrations, and we're going to do unconscious bias training, when in fact, DEI is very much integrated with leadership education, right? And one of the things we see or have seen recently is that there is a significant need for manager education. Shout out to the professional adult. If y'all haven't checked out Caren's work, she works very, very closely with middle managers and does a fantastic job. So if you need some help, but really, you know, to your point, there are all these generations that are coming together. And not only that, there's a significant just change in our overall working environments with, you know, the shift to remote and hybrid work and people trying to understand how to balance that and work through that. And so if you have managers who aren't skilled to do that, it's going to be a real struggle. And the role of managers has shifted so significantly and so quickly. It's no longer just, oh, I'm here to, you know, assign tasks to people and, you know, submit their payroll and all that stuff. It's that. And then I'm also here to, you know, help them work through problems that they're having. I'm here to help them think through professional development, because a lot of organizations pretty much no longer have learning and development as a vertical anymore, which is terrifying, but it is what it is. And so managers are kind of left to deal with all of that and then deal with our ever increasing mental health issues across this nation, across the globe, quite frankly. And so it's just a lot. And again, people that are working in DEI roles, many of us are skilled at helping you figure out how to get people of different backgrounds working together. And so without that, I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be interesting to watch. And then we've got the whole political scene with the changes, potential changes coming with affirmative action. We've got a new presidential election coming up very soon. So the next 2 to 3 years are going to be a ride. Yeah, to say the least, from my perspective. That's just my humble opinion. What do I know?
No, you just see what's happening. That's fine.
I'm just sitting over here watching in my little corner. I'm like, oh God,
it's fine. It's fine.
This is fine.
Right? I very much feel like the dog with the flavor. I'm like, this is fine.
Every day, I'm like, this is fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
Sips coffee. Oh goodness, but yeah, it's something.
Well, and I can also hear I can already hear the question of, so are you saying that minoritized people should do DEI work? Mm-hmm. Should they do it at all? Because I can already hear it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, folks like to get in their feelings about things. My answer is, yeah, absolutely. You can do it, but just understand and fully address the privilege. And I think that it becomes then incumbent on those who are from more privileged groups. And again, you talked about the privilege matrix earlier on, but from more privileged groups that, yes, speak up to that. Speak up to the fact that you call people out. Be like, yeah, I know that I'm here because I'm more palatable to y'all. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know that I'm here because I am an easier sell.
Yeah.
Say it.
Yeah.
Say it. Why not?
Exactly. And I think, you know, I've worked with other non-Black DEI practitioners to do like co-facilitations. And I think even that's a great opportunity, right? It's like leveraging our strengths, recognizing the reality of who we're working with and what we're trying to deliver. I agree. I think there's space for everyone. I don't think that it's contradictory to say that folks working in the DEI space should all be the same. Absolutely not. The point is to promote diversity, and we need diversity in all aspects of the word, right? And so I think you make a good point of just making sure you recognize your power, your privilege, your limitations as well, and making sure that you are continuing to check that. And that should be across the board. That's not unique. That, to me, from my perspective, that's not unique to just white individuals or white DEI practitioners. Everyone should be doing that. Like I am constantly checking myself on different things all the time, because to me, you cannot do this work if you don't continue your own individual journey. And so I think that's a really important part of the work. And I think there's just so much opportunity for people to come together and collaborate. There was a thread recently talking about, I don't care, I'm going to name drop. I was going to not, whatever. There's a lot of talk about Brene Brown's work and Robin DiAngelo's work. And someone posted how, you know, well, there were kind of two schools of thoughts that I saw people having a dialogue or discourse over, which is like on one end, you know, a lot of other white women were like, I find them very relatable because I see myself in them and they're able to deliver a message, be palatable, in a way that I am receptive to. And I don't find myself consciously or unconsciously pushing back on. I get that. Cool. If that's what it takes to open you up, because otherwise, if you talk to me, you might not. Right. Then on the other hand, there was the conversation of, you know, yes, we hear that. However, they cannot provide you with a viewpoint of someone who has been marginalized. They can share an outside perspective, but they can't really tell you about the experience. So it's just very interesting. Again, I think it's just another reminder that we all need to be coming together to do this work. And I think if you're passionate about it, if you're truly in it to foster diversity, equity, inclusion, then you should be also open and receptive to working with other people, bringing people in as necessary, etc. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I will openly admit that, you know, when I first started my DEI work, it was very seductive to talk and to kind of like read the work of folks like Brene Brown, like Robin DiAngelo, Tim Wise, kind of all of those folks. It was very, very seductive because it is palatable.
Yeah.
But the same way that McDonald's is palatable, you know, it doesn't mean it's the best hamburger. But then there's also times you just kind of want a McDonald's burger. So I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I would just challenge folks to look for something that's not a McDonald's hamburger.
Diversify it, right? Eat the McDonald's, go to Five Guys, go to Shake Shack, In-N-Out Burger, like get it all. That is the point. Like diversify your sources. Like don't just rely on one source to learn about anything, honestly, not even just DEI. Like if you're truly trying to learn something, seek different perspectives. I think that's really important to note. There's something else I was going to touch on, but I can't remember. To your point though, about, you know, reading and examining the work of different people, I feel like even if we don't teach to or use that in how we're educating and helping people, you almost have to still look at it because you need to know how a lot of people are thinking and what they're reading. So like I've read things like White Fragility, right? And, you know, things like that, because it's like, I want to know, and people will bring it up and when I'm having conversations with them or in sessions, and I have to know, you know, the perspective they're coming with. So I do think those works are important because they're already out there. So for the things that are out there, it's not a bad idea to consume and understand what other people are reading. I cannot think of the other thing that I was going to bring up, but it's all good. I know we're pushing 30 minutes and we always try to keep our videos at like 15, 20, but not today. We had a lot to get off our chest. I think it's just, it gets overwhelming at times. Oh, it came to me. See, good old ADHD. I was thinking about just, you know, avoiding kind of tokenism as a Black DEI practitioner. I've been in so many situations, even in consulting, where it became clear to me very quickly that I was only brought in so that people could check a box and say, hey, we're working with this person. We're doing the DEI thing. And even initially they talked a really good game, and I say they, I mean leaders within the organization of, yes, we want to do this work. We're committed. We're, you know, And then slowly you start to see that facade trickle away, and it's clear that you are not committed. You think I'm going to come in and wave a magic wand and make whatever utopia happen that we've never even seen in this lifetime. Good luck with that. And so it's frustrating at times because as good as I have faith in my discernment, it's not always the best. And people do try to take advantage and want you, again, just to say, hey, we have a DEI practitioner. Oh, and it's also a Black woman. And it sucks.
Yeah.
It really sucks. So.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It just, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Again, it's that really, really fine line where it's like, on one hand, I know that I'm being brought in for the optics of it. But on the other hand, I'm glad that I'm here so that you can see this out of a mouth that isn't like you.
Right.
Because again, like, the one way that you can make these connections and the one way you can start to change hearts and minds is by having exposure to people who aren't like you.
Right.
So on one hand, it's it's great and I get it and I'm excited about it, but it does sting to kind of know that I'm here for optics.
Yeah. And I mean, there is the upside of, if you come in and you do the work and you shake things up a little bit. One of my favorite things to do is to start, One of my favorite things to do is to come in, do a thorough assessment, and start letting people know, here are the issues.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of folks think I'm just going to come in and then be like, oh, let's do this training. And, I can review your documents and your content and your website and things like, yes, I can do those things, but I'm also going to ask people in the workplace questions, and I'm going to start identifying themes and patterns and start letting you know what your issues are.
Yeah.
Which then is up to you to start to solve. And if you share your issues with the rest of your organization, then you have that added pressure of people looking at you and trying to hold you accountable to do it.
Absolutely. And I think that is really important. And I also think that lends more of an air of credibility, and we can talk about credibility and all that jazz. But
yeah.
I think it does, because you're again sitting down having this conversation where I'm going to treat you again exactly like I would treat any other part of my business, where I'm going to assess what we need to do first. I'm going to figure out where we need to be before I start popping in and just saying, okay, we need to do this, that, and the other.
Right.
So it does add in that credibility, but then at the same time you do it and folks are like, oh my God, what is happening?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It gets frustrating everywhere you play it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yet we still march on.
And yet,
still I rise, and still
I
freaking rise. Any final thoughts?
I don't think so. I just really love having these conversations, and definitely come see Manage In for talking about building and developing inclusive managers. I do not talk about the C-suite. I do not talk about the executive level. There are plenty of people out there who do that. My focus is on your first and middle managers. Like those are the people I'm more interested in. So
definitely
check out Manage In.
Cool. All right, y'all. Appreciate y'all tuning in as always. Again, I feel like I should be plugging like this has been another episode of, but it's not. It's just us talking. It's just us talking. So we are nearing the end of Black History Month, which is a little sad, but we wanted to do a series that was focused on Black issues in the workplace, and we thought it would be a good idea to round it out talking about our experiences as Black DEI practitioners. And the experiences we share today are not unique to us. I have conversations, and Caren has conversations with other DEI practitioners who unfortunately go through the same things, but still I rise. We're still pushing forward. We love this work. It's what we do, at least for now. If you have other topics you'd like us to cover as we move forward, leave a comment, send an email, send a smoke signal, carrier pigeon, whatever works for you. Let us know. And we look forward to seeing you back here again soon. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.